Okay, welcome to week 9 of Exposure, my weekly video series where I put out a very imperfect video as an exposure for my OCD perfectionism. But actually, that's a bit of a lie. It is not week 9. It is really week 12. I have missed 2 weeks. It's been 3 weeks since I last did one of these. And this was an ironclad commitment I made when I started this project, is I was going to do one of these each week no matter what. And I have not adhered to that in recent weeks. And I don't have a terribly compelling excuse. Of course, as I hear myself say that, where my mind goes is no one really cares. I mean, there's not a wide viewership for this project. And I am doing this above all for myself to get freedom from my perfectionism. And it's been working very well. So it's a success in that regard. But yeah, the reason I didn't adhere to it was, well, things got hectic. And I chose to do things that I enjoy doing. But a lot has happened, unsurprisingly, in the last 3 weeks. And I say unsurprisingly, not that I think my life is terribly unusual, though I think the freedom I have in my life, not having a day job, allows for perhaps more variation than the average person's life. But I think in 3 weeks, things are always changing. In any period of time, things are always changing. But yeah, the last video I recorded was soon after I'd been reunited with my partner, Anna, after about a month-long break where we weren't in the same place geographically, and we weren't in the same place emotionally. Or she was questioning where she was emotionally. Actually, that's not accurate. As she said many times, her heart has no questions, but her mind was raising a lot of questions about the relationship, about me. So we came together, finally. And as I shared, 3 weeks ago in the last edition of this, it was a fruitful, at times challenging conversation. And there were still questions after that conversation. And I would say at this point, there really are no questions. The relationship is in a better, more solid place than it's ever been. In fact, I can't imagine it being in a better, more solid place. And what's interesting is, so when things feel challenging or uncertain in the relationship, and those two are more or less synonyms for me, meaning they feel challenging when they feel uncertain. And the uncertainty often comes down to her uncertainty, her, I think, justified, understandable uncertainty about me, as I've shared, due primarily to my dramatically better, but still sometimes problematic OCD, and secondarily to my more slowly improving, but improving, just organizational, my career, basically, and the general chaos of my life. And then, of course, the third factor that will never improve is the 17-year age difference. That's just a fact, and one that we both grapple with in different ways. Anyway, things feel very certain right now, very solid right now. We're very in love, and when we are in these places where things are just amazing, wonderful, I mean, indescribably magical. If you've been in love, and I hope you've been in love, you know what it's like. And if you're not sure if you've been in love, then you haven't been in love. And, I'd been in love, I would say really, really in love once before, 20 years ago. The aftermath of that relationship is when I developed the obsessive compulsive disorder. But this is a much more conscious love now, in the sense that in that relationship, it really was a falling. It was like this involuntary sort of, just this gravity that pulled us to each other. And there is that element with Anna. But whereas 20 years ago, I was not aware of the profound vulnerability of this relationship. I wasn't basically aware of how much I could be hurt. Now I'm acutely aware of how much I can be hurt. And so choosing to open my heart that same way requires more courage and is more difficult. It's more of a conscious choice now. But a choice in the way you might say it's a choice if you're paddling a canoe to go with the current. It doesn't take a lot of effort to go with the love, to open my heart. But I'm aware, to extend the metaphor, that there's a lot of rapids in this particular river. There are shallows, there are eddies, there may be major waterfalls up ahead where the boat and perhaps me could be smashed. I didn't know that 20 years ago. So yeah, it's incredible. I'm coming up short of adjectives because I think I'm trying to describe a certain experience, a certain state in love. Yeah. I like how we say in love because that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm in this world, inhabiting this world with her. And the world is not just different when I'm with her. The world is not just different in the domain of relationships. Everything feels different. I don't mean the standard cliches, the sun is brighter, the birds tweet more happily. I don't know if that's a cliche, but you get the idea. But more, yeah, there's this fundamental fact of my existence that is visceral. It's not so much intellectual. And in fact, intellectually, I have trouble wrapping my head around it. I still, a year and a half into this relationship, I'm still like, wow, I actually have like a partner? I mean, I didn't really think this could happen. In the 20 years when I didn't have this, when I had these much more inconsequential relationships, and I told myself, oh, the real relationship I want is just around the corner, a deep part of me, I now know, knew that, no, you're not going to get that because I didn't really want it. I didn't want the vulnerability. And I saw all this on a mushroom trip a year and a half ago, and 4 days later, I first connected deeply with Anna, and yeah. So, yeah, and I guess that's where I'm at, is really just kind of owning like, oh, this is exactly what I want, and there's really no problem here. There's no problem here. I think the thing that has caused the most concern on my end, it has been when we met a year and a half ago, I was very clear in the aftermath of this mushroom trip that I want a partnership. She was quite clear that she did not want a partnership. But we fell in love, and she chose to say yes to this, but this has resurfaced periodically. Should she be in a relationship at this point in her life? Someone who's really been in relationships pretty much continuously until a year and a half before she met me with us. Her last significant relationship had ended, but she felt like she needed more time. In part because the intervening year and a half between the end of that relationship and meeting me, she hadn't fully been alone. She dated. And she had, I guess somewhat ironically, more or less the same time I came to the conclusion like, yes, I want a deep partnership and I'm willing to say yes to it even though it's going to be difficult and scary at times. She had come to the conclusion of no, I really need to be alone completely and not even date. But here we are. But this has been a cause of concern for both of us. Is the timing right for her? But I think at this point, yeah, it just feels like there's such a strong, I don't know, things are just so wonderful. I'm aware that I'm repeating the same words, but there's just, she's in, she's fully in. She's more in than she's ever been, and I'm more in than I've ever been. And I don't think that's a coincidence because I think often when I find myself, so I don't have deep doubts about the relationship, but I have what my friend Kevin calls, I don't know CD, where my mind will go to, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about this. I don't know if this is quite right, without having any substantive objections. With past women, it was always, oh, they're not smart enough. They're not beautiful enough. We don't share the same sense of humor, whatever it is. There was always some reason. With Anna, there's never been a substantive objection. She's not this enough, she's not that enough, because she really is everything enough, but it does sometimes manifest as this I don't know CD, which I, of course, see as just my mind continuing to try to protect me from this deep vulnerability. But even that's really gone away. And I'm aware it's not always going to, I'm aware it's going to resurface. Doubts in some form, I think, are inevitable probably for everyone. They're certainly going to be inevitable for me. But yeah, more and more, not more and more, fully, I'd say at this point, it's like, yeah, this is who I want to be with, and I'm with her. There's nothing lacking. It doesn't feel like there's any discrepancy at this point between what we want. It doesn't feel like there's any problem. It doesn't feel like there's any concern. I mean, the concerns for me are more the concerns I feel because I do love her in the same way, like, well, her parents really like me, but they tell her, her father not really, but her mother, like, hey, you know, you could do better. And I get it. The age difference, where I'm at with my career, the much improved but still sometimes problematic OCD. And I think sometimes I feel that way towards her, where I see this person who I love, who I have so much respect and admiration for, and I feel like, oh, maybe she'd be better off with someone else. And on one hand, I feel like, oh, that's a loving thought to have towards her. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, but it could also just be my mind trying to find another way to protect me. There's going to be a part of my mind that will always be looking for a reason to say no to this, to distance myself, to close off, to protect myself from the vulnerability. So, and I think it might be both. I think that part is operative when I have these thoughts of, oh, maybe she'd be better with someone else. But I also think, and this is not going to be a sympathetic thing to say, but a man talking about age differences. But as I aged for these 20 years, in my mind, when I imagined my perfect partner, yes, I admit it, I imagined a younger woman. But now that I have that, I'm seeing the unavoidable drawback if you really love someone, which is, yeah, if this does become a lifetime commitment, and in this moment, I think we both see it going there, though who knows, I will leave this plane of reality first. I will be consigning her to pain and mourning. And also, if we have a family, which we both want, though we're not 100%, neither of us are 100% sure about that, but I suspect that her desire for a family will increase. And my desire is there. It's just the reality of like, how old am I going to be when my kid graduates high school? So that's the other cost of having a significantly younger partner is, yeah, apart from the fact that I'll probably die first, there's the fact that at some point I'll probably be limited physically in ways she's not. That feels very abstract now because even with the age difference, I can hike for 12 hours and not get tired. I can dance for, not 12 hours, but I can dance for 4 hours and not get tired. I have a great deal of physical energy and always have, and it really doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. So when we do physical activities, dancing, hiking, that sort of thing, she's the one who gets tired first. But yeah, I may have the same energy that I had 20 years ago, but I think it's safe to say I won't have the same energy level 20 years from now. So that's just a fact of this. But even there, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is her choice. I am who she wants. And whereas in the past, there was this part of me that was like, really? Like, why? Now I'm kind of owning it where I'm like, okay, yeah. Why? I know why. Because she loves who I am. She loves my intelligence, my sensitivity, my creativity, and I think above all, not I think, she says, my transparency, my transparency, my authenticity, how I'm fully and completely, myself. What does that statement mean? I mean, I guess what I mean is I don't play games. I don't hold back. I mean, this, you're seeing it right now. I don't think many people do something like this. And this isn't a sort of patting myself on the back like, oh, I'm so amazing. I don't know what this is. I've shared this before, but there's always been this deep need to share myself fully. And I think it comes from a deep sense of loneliness. And I think that loneliness comes both from historical biographical stuff. I did not have many friends for years when I was growing up. Then I did develop friends later on. But there was this period from, when you're really young, your friendships are dependent on your parents, basically. In my case, I was friends with kids. My mom was friends with their moms. And then you reach this point where you transition to sort of a free market friendship economy where kids choose their own friends. And, and like some countries transitioning to that, I lost everything. I was sort of the equivalent of like the Russian oil baron, state-funded wealth. You get the metaphor. Anyway, I went through a period where I had no friends. And then I gradually found my own friends, but there were years where I was very, very lonely. So I think that's part of it, but I think part of it is the fact that, we are alone, of course. We can't directly share our experience, our thoughts, our memories, our sensations with another person. And that may seem like, sophomore in high school stoner revelation, but it's a fundamental fact of existence that, it's this weird thing, right? Because, I mean, I'm connecting to you right now. And in a way, not in a way, we are sharing something right now, even though this is temporally separated. I'm going to post this later. And I share with the people in this house right now. I'm at my parents' house. It's the day before Thanksgiving. I'm actually in their bathroom because that's the only quiet place, relatively speaking. But yeah. And I see this with Anna, where I'm like, oh yeah, she's her own person. We're sharing at a very deep level, as deeply as I've connected and shared with another human. And yet we have our own experiences. So I think this need, this desire to share my own experience very openly is kind of like saying, well, there's always going to be some loss of direct connection. We can't directly connect. So let me at least put out the signal of myself as strongly and cleanly as possible. And so this, I'm doing it now, and I do this in real life. And she really appreciates it because she is that way too. So yeah, I haven't seen her now in a week. So I guess, speaking of biographical history, what's happened in the last few weeks? Well, yeah, things felt more and more solid. So I was in the Bay Area for another 2 weeks, I think, after I recorded the last one. And yeah, with Anna, it was generally 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we'd get closer, but then there would be little things that would trigger my insecurity. I shared one of them at the end of the last video where someone, this sort of mentor, just out of the blue reached out to her and said, hey, I think Adam is holding you back. And and that was very difficult. And then we talked and we got closer. And then she had a succession of experiences with men who she has a problem, which I recognize is a real problem and one that many women deal with, which is it's hard for her to know what men's motivation is when they want to hang out with her. And she had a couple of experiences with guys who she assumed was a platonic thing and they confessed feelings for her. And she shared this with me, and this triggered me because I was like, the fact this keeps happening, like maybe you're kind of telegraphing that you are somewhat open. And she reflected and realized that there was some truth to that and found it very helpful. And that connected to, I'm not going to get too much into it because this gets into her stuff, but her own desires for validation, for feeling loved and appreciated. The point I'm trying to make is, over these couple of weeks in the Bay Area, it wasn't always easy. There were times where my insecurity was triggered, but yeah, we got closer and closer. And by the end, it was just like, yeah, we're doing this. There's no doubt. Then I went to, and I will just put I'll talk briefly. I went to Yosemite. Man, so the OCD is so much better, but I saw this so clearly. There's a part of me, where the OCD, any change is scary. And so I'd planned this trip to Yosemite and I was very excited about it. And then a few days before I was supposed to go, I just started getting comically, ridiculously afraid. I was like, I shouldn't go. And all these justifications. I did another short video about it. I think I called it OCD Doth Protest Too Much, because that's what was happening. Is I was getting these very, very strong thoughts. Like, you shouldn't go. You shouldn't go because you can't afford to take this time off. You shouldn't go because you're going to be lonely there. You shouldn't go because you're going to be bored. You shouldn't go because the weather's not going to be optimal. All these reasons that, my mind was screaming this was a huge mistake. As I shared on that video, it felt like I was walking down death road to the electric chair instead of going to a magical national park. And so I stuck with the decision, and it turned out, unsurprisingly, to be indescribably magical. And Anna and I had talked about going together, but she couldn't, and I was glad she wasn't there. I wanted to share it with her, and I made a lot of videos and shared those with her, but I also appreciated just being alone in that environment. And so that was a highlight. And it's a bit of a game changer for me. So what's drawn me to the San Francisco Bay Area pre-meeting Anna, she lives out there, was, well, a couple of things. There's a great solo theater called The Marsh, but the nature, really. And the nature for me has really meant like Mount Tam, Point Reyes, these sort of oceanfront wildernesses. And ocean is my favorite environment, but mountains, they're a pretty close second in Yosemite. I mean, the valley, and I did this one hike, Clouds Rest, which I think was the most astonishing vistas I'd ever experienced. So it was a little bit of a journey though, because there was all this sort of OCD doubt. And when I was driving there, I'm in the car driving to Yosemite, and a part of my mind is like, turn around, man, turn around. And it's so strong that that's the giveaway. I'm like, this is crazy. It's not going to be that bad, but it felt really, really wrong. And actually I got to Yosemite, and immediately I was like, this was a huge mistake. It's cold here. I'm lonely. It gets dark early. And I thought about waking up early the next morning and going back to the Bay Area. But I knew what was going on. I knew it was my OCD. And I knew that, the way through is just stick it out. So if it turns out to be a mistake, so what? And it didn't turn out to be a mistake. So that was sweet. But really, the trip was mostly about being with Anna and just getting very, very close to her. And then I went to New York to do the mushroom cure. Always a very intense experience, both on stage, it's an intense show, but also I was doing it in a new theater with a new stage manager, a new person running lights and sound who had never done it before, and there's a lot of light and sound cues, and we were only going to have a short, 4 hours to do. It was going to be very stressful, and sure enough, it was very stressful. And, what was encouraging to me is I didn't get overwhelmed with the anxiety, the real world anxiety of doing this show under less than optimal conditions. I think that's something that, I want to mark, is I've been feeling more and more just a basic state of equanimity, of peace, relatively speaking. I still experience very, very intense emotions a lot of the time, joy, sadness, fear, grief, but I'm not swept up in them entirely the way I was. And so even in the intense emotion of trying to get the show off the ground, there was an awareness of what a privilege it is that I'm going to do this show and people are going to see it. And hopefully, and I think it's safe to say they did, appreciate it. I'm going to connect with people emotionally. I'm going to share my story, my art, my heart, I would say. And it's scary at times, it's intense, but anyway, it's Thanksgiving, or it's the day before Thanksgiving now. And Anna, so I haven't seen her in about a week. She's flying in tonight. I can't wait to see her. I've never been more excited to see her. I've never missed her more than I've missed her over these last 6 days, and it's been mutual. And this morning, when I did my morning meditation and prayer, prayer is, I'll do another video about prayer, but suffice to say, I don't know what I'm praying to, but prayer is just it's a great consolation, and it's a powerful tool because it defines what I want, and it reminds me what I don't seem able to accomplish on my own. So I generally, when I pray, I ask for help, not winning the lottery or getting a Netflix special, help doing things that are theoretically in my power, but that I don't seem able or willing to do. So often it's willingness. So an example is a long running prayer of mine is I will pray for more willingness to be uncomfortable. Because if I'm willing to be uncomfortable, if I'm willing to experience intense, sometimes aversive feeling emotions, then I have more freedom. If I'm not willing to experience those emotions, then I get caught up in OCD, trying to get rid of them, or other related avoidance things, checking my phone obsessively. But I also do gratitude when I pray. And this morning praying, I just was overwhelmed with gratitude. Not quite overwhelmed. That's making it a little more dramatic, maybe, but touched. Where I'm like, how wonderful life is. It's Thanksgiving. I'm with these people I love, my parents, sister, brother-in-law, my incredibly, indescribably precious nephews and nieces. I'm very relieved to report the youngest, my favorite. I play favorites. They cycle through. I mean, she doesn't really have competition now being the youngest. So, and one of the things that makes her so cute is she can't pronounce the letter R. Tooth fairy, that's what she'll say. I'm at the ka. And my sister enrolled her in speech therapy a couple of months ago, and I was like, no. But I was very relieved. The first thing we did when I got here is I was like, what did I say? Run to the river. I'm going to run to the river. Anyway, I have the kids, my siblings, in-laws, my parents, and Anna will be here tonight. I've always been very close to my family, and Thanksgiving has always been one of my favorite holidays. And there have been many Thanksgivings where it's been like, oh, this is sweet, but I wish I had a partner. I wish I had someone to share this with, seeing my siblings with their partners, their spouses. And I have that. There's really nothing else I want right now other than more career success. And I gesture towards the camera like this is going to deliver it. If you look at the viewership numbers of this, it's not, clearly that's not the case. But I will say I'm putting out more other shorter videos that might reach more people, I think, because again, this exposure is working. It is loosening up my perfectionism. And perfectionism specifically related to putting out videos. Because on stage, I'm very willing to go on stage with, totally unscripted. That's what my show, Adam Strauss is Not Unhappy, is, though now it's starting to become somewhat at least structured. Anyway, I'm grateful. What an unoriginal thought on Thanksgiving, but I am grateful, and I have so much to be grateful for. I have what I want. And someone quoted something to me who saw one of my performances. I don't remember who. Some famous playwright, or I think it was a playwright, or humorist, and I'm going to butcher it, but there's two tragedies. One is not getting your heart's desire, and the other is getting it. And I'm getting it now. But I also get it. I understand it, because I'll say this, is when things are tough with Anna, I worry about the relationship, and I sometimes fantasize about it ending and the relief of this fear. When things are wonderful, I worry about something happening to her. So yeah, you get what you want and you worry about losing it. You don't have what you want and you suffer because you don't have what you want. But having experienced both types, I would choose this. So, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll just leave it at that.